Now we will have the last speaker on the list is the Center for Justice and Peace. Yes, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I represent the Center for Justice and Peace, a Venezuelan NGO. And while I will refer specifically, for the most part, to the relation of the OHCHR with Venezuela, it is clear that these concerns translate to other contexts and raise concerns about the overall approach of the organization to human rights protection. Venezuela has two active mechanisms reporting to the Human Rights Council, a representative of the Office of the High Commissioner in country, and a fact-finding mission mandated to investigate serious human rights violations. These mechanisms have been an invaluable resource for victims and civil society in our efforts to improve the human rights situation on the ground. The FFM in particular has brought us closer to justice for victims than we have been so far. However, we still have a very long way to go. Yet, the Venezuelan government has skillfully crafted an image of normalization of the situation and even collaboration with the United Nations and other multilateral organizations. This image comes at the expense of the Venezuelan people. Less countries are willing to open their doors to Venezuelan refugees, less humanitarian aid is reaching the population, and quite simply less attention is being devoted to the Venezuelan crisis, which persists in all of its dimensions: institutional, social, economic, humanitarian, and importantly, human rights. The UN, and particularly the OHCHR, is at risk of perhaps inadvertently feeding into this notion of the Venezuelan crisis as a thing of the past, in the way that different mechanisms engage with the government. The policy of constructive ambiguity under which the UN operates in Venezuela has frequently erred on the side of too ambiguous. Recently, High Commissioner Türk, just a few minutes ago, asked us how we can make human rights more central to prevention and how their work can support member states. We argue that the first step is to be unapologetic on the characterization of the situation affecting the people in question. We have an objective metric to inform this characterization, and it is international human rights standards, and more specifically, the recommendations by different human rights mechanisms made to the states. We understand the implementation of these recommendations to be the true benchmark of a state's cooperation, the proof of its effort in good faith of improving the human rights situation of its citizens, a proof that in the case of Venezuela is sorely lacking. The participation of Venezuela and other states with weak human rights protections in multilateral spaces should not be a tool at the service of a narrative of cooperation and normalization that makes suffering invisible, but as an opportunity to demand accountability, transparency, and commitment to international obligations. We must avoid the instrumentalization of the United Nations spaces and deepen our commitment to the search for justice, demand for rights, and compliance with international recommendations as a way to build lasting peace. So then my question is, how can we from civil society and within the United Nations ensure that in our efforts to maintain harmonious working relationships with member states do not come at the expense of the necessary characterization of the human rights situation in different countries, Venezuela significantly, and that they center the implementation of recommendations at the benchmark to assess cooperation? Thank you.